PR Connections Radio presents. This episode of Liberating Menopause is brought to you by Classy Communications PR and Advertising. Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and nonprofit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success.
Hi everyone, welcome. Lisa Vasquez coming to you from Liberating Menopause, prconnectionsradio.com. And today, this episode is all about, it's a wake-up call. And I'm sure a lot of people are in tune to this, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that are not. And we're talking about the safety of the job, the myth that, we've grown into. We developed a lifetime of listening and seeing, back in earlier years when there was jobs that consisted of pensions. This is when we knew life as, you grow up, you get a job, and you earn your way through life, and then you get your pension, and then you're on your way, right? And those sound like they were happy days, and they must have been, because the pension itself given from the company, wow, that was a real gift. But today that's not easy to come by, because we have those 401ks now that have taken over, and with all these different changes. And then the reason this whole story is about to take place with me is, for years, women, we were told that how safe, certain jobs and careers would be. I mean, we went to school, and even looking up statistically how long that job would last before it was saturated. I don't know. Today, it states that, this could be turned into an automated job. This could be taken over by AI, because that's not what they were telling me back in 78 when I had to look these things up. So, and for years, healthcare, administrative services, fields you could depend on. Who would think that would be a problem and that we would be losing something like that? But the ground is shifting, and it's not asking for our permission. It's just rolling through. 92,000 people just recently lost their job in February. And that was a big sum of women. 28% were healthcare, and 75%, if I'm not mistaken, were all women. And these risks are just the numbers alone, because you have to wonder how. The strikes that the nurses just recently had in a couple of big cities, there's a lot of burnout because so many people are assigned to one nurse, and the hours increase. Sometimes nurses' jobs are only 3 days a week, right? 12-hour shifts, but because it's such a demand and needed, they're called in and they work lots more hours than that. So we definitely lead into burnout. Things have changed as far as medical becoming more business acclimated, where, the numbers are becoming more important. And it's a sad thing to think, but that healthcare system being more dedicated to the patients isn't the livelihood that we used to see. Now it's more how many we can get in hours in a day in with one machine. Can that machine go fast enough? Watching the technology in radiology was just incredible. From mammography being in the beginning, as I told you, a pioneer in the field, there was times we had to wind the machine down, wind it down to put the compression. Then eventually we turned into automation where the compression would just land, and then we would release it automatically from behind the panel where we were at, where before we'd have to run out and unroll it. So a lot of these things took more time, but today it's like pretty much 7-8 minutes, I think. I actually just had mine the other day, and I was, just amazed, because the system, the way they rolled me in, the way they rolled me out, it was also programmed so timely fashion and accounted for in every minute of that moment of being there. And so, and this is just the way it has turned out to be. There's just so much that has changed. I used to believe that, so when I was working, I took this career thinking that my job was going to last forever, right? You get into the medical field, you're young. This is back in the 70s, nursing, medical, it's all big demands. Everything is, you know, looking very promising that, if you take that career, for one thing, you can travel with it. You can go anywhere you want. If you needed to, you just get another license in another state. And, things like that take place. You are pretty much guaranteed because it's medical, right? We're going to be in demand. It is going to be something that will take you throughout your life. Well, that isn't how it did happen, because there came a life back in 2009 when there was a whole restructuring in the world. And this restructuring took place with the housing when that fell apart. And I was part of that community because I fell apart with it. I was only part-time. At the time, my husband, he needed a procedure. And so he was the full-time guy. So I had to find a job. And at that time, my city was saturated where I was at. So I had to hit the road. And by doing that, I went to go chase the dream, right? I went all the way up to Washington State, leaving, the desert. I went to Washington State, found a great full-time job. But because the time of restructuring the world was taking place everywhere, that job lasted 6 months. So I was like, wow, I had never been laid off so many times. First of all, because I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, right? I'm part-time. And then because just chasing the dream of the restructuring, people were getting laid off. Departments weren't hiring. There was freezes. This is why I had to leave the whole state and go there. So that was 6 months. And then from there, I went to Northern California, and now I'm chasing the dream even more. Never lived in a city, a farm, ranch, things like that. And drove around mountain grades and going up hills and all these different things. This wasn't something I've done. I've lived on flat land my whole life. So this was pretty interesting, but the roads changed, I really had to pick myself up and relocate. And that's not the world today. It's not easy that somebody wants to make that decision to go chase that dream and go after their job and relocate the whole structure and start it all over. It wasn't that I was thinking I was going to be gone forever. The adventure did take 6 years. It was pretty interesting because I kept chasing the job and coming back home. There wasn't anything there for me to come back to. There still was no job opening. So from Northern California, I went down to Ventura, California. From there, I went down to Newport, California. Then I went down to Rancho Santa Margarita. Now that was my kind of safe landing. But the point being that every time I would get into a job, 6 months, oh my gosh, one of them lasted 8 months. And I thought, oh my God, I'm doing pretty good. It's almost going to be a year, right? Oh my God, no, 8 months. 8, 9 months, they had to lay me off again. But in this job, it was so cool because administrative, they actually helped me find another job, which was really cool of them. That was really outstanding. I'll never forget them for that. And then that's kind of where they ended putting me into Rancho Santa Margarita, where, I just went through, I had a great job, the 8-hour job, and then I actually found a part-time job. So I had fun on the weekends, and I got to do this part-time job doing what I love doing. And then, but, I had to stay there for years. I didn't just get to go home and pick up and go home. On the other side of that, my husband's at home. He has a great job in communications. So he withstood this whole storm that was taking place, but I couldn't come home for some reason. I still had to work out in the land of milk and honey is what I call it. It was an adventure. It was a wilderness, really, because there was so much blind faith and blind trust that I had to walk roads on. It wasn't that I was just confident in, oh my gosh, this is all great. No, I had a lot of tears built up because, come on, you're married for almost 25 years, I think, at that time, and now you're being separated. And the separation, I was thinking, was one reason. And then kind of you find out your spirit and your soul was actually on a different kind of camping trip, finding a different you in all this, building up more character and strength in your yourself and the confidence. It was a different kind of character building, but it did take me all that time. And then it was so cool because Rancho Santa Margarita was such a beautiful place. They were all beautiful. So honestly, if you had to go rehab in something like this, I was grateful that everything was, Washington State. I mean, I did the whole West Coast. Could you imagine? I met so many different cool women in different modalities of my mammography division in different offices in different locations of the city. You get to see different grid you could see in one area the more transplanted people would come into town from different countries, things like that. So you get to learn so much. I mean, it was very educational, but again, there was a lot of tears built up. There was a lot of not why me, it was how to understand this. And am I on the right track? Is this all really, am I doing the right thing? I tried to get my husband in California for his communications, and it was just funny because he couldn't come. I was like, why is the land of milk and honey closed to him? Actually, he grew up over there, and that's what was so funny. Left him in the desert, and I was in land of milk and honey, what I call. And so as I developed and grew through this, I eventually did get to come back home. And that was 6 years later. And that was because my old boss, one of my old bosses here, had a job as an administrator leader. And he called me up and said, we need a mammo tech. Had it not been for that phone call and him saving that marking spot for me, I still wouldn't have had a place to come home to, and I would have continued living in California because, outside of the city being so beautiful and working in the communities of great healthcare systems, and it was just divine circumstances that I had to live in. And these are the challenges that are about to come out right now because nobody's really secure today. I mean, that was then. And it was restructuring for me today because the AI is taking over. It's called rebalancing. We're rebalancing positions, the replacing of different divisions. Again, all the women that have lost their jobs. I mean, I don't know that they woke up thinking that. I don't really know how they were notified about this. I know that the shock in 2009, my own job, it dissolved overnight, right? I mean, during a department reconstruction every time, I kept, wow, because all those years of always working in the field, I think at that point, it was probably about 25, almost 30 years that I was working, this wasn't a factor. So to find out that, wow, time to use that license and really register it in other states, everything that I had dreamt that this thing would secure me with back then, thinking I would have the choice and the option, not that it was something that was forced upon me. And now it's time to pull out those little armored weapons you have stored and you could use them, right? So that was the ability that I was blessed by and very happy because, I could take my license and I just had to register in different states, take their tests, whatever they want. Because I was just talking about, how overnight, the jobs, you get tangled up in all these divisions of life, and you're thinking how standard it was. And lucky for me at the time, the opportunity to use my license in different states was there. The opportunity to take my career into a different state was there. So, all I had to do was keep chasing the dream and just, hope. Oh, wow, I fell again. Oh, wow, I fell again. And so many times that I had to fall, you're standing there thinking, oh my gosh, you got to get another job. I never had to chase the job so much like I did then. And it was really chasing my dream more than anything. And this is why I talk about living in blind faith and blind trust, because by going through that, that is what, again, built my character. Eventually coming back in 2015, having my boss call me, telling me there's a position. He called me in December. He held it till I got there in May. And everything worked out. And then, I was able to come back home, here I am 10 years later, but within 7 to 8 years, I did have that cool job before it was time for me to retire. And here I am now at the doorway of retirement. And this is just another weight of life that we have lived through. But the one thing that nobody tells us is how heavy it gets. All those years of you're climbing the ladder, you're checking boxes, you're building up what looks like, exactly the American dream of what we've known that it has been from the outside. It all adds up. And then, so many administrative jobs are falling apart. I mean, I think they're talking about another 16,000 jobs that are about to be laid off because of AI. And I don't know if you've ever really considered the fact, what if this happened to you? You've checked off all these boxes, right? You're climbing the ladder, you're going all the way up. And then every morning you have that same commitment. You come into the same exhaustion. You come into, you receive that paycheck, bills are paid, kids went to school. Now you start finding out that you're standing and where you're at, where you really, with the ability that you scheduled everything according to that clock, but your clock of life hasn't been scheduled. I mean, there could have been, as if you're raising a family, you weren't there for some of your children, their events when they were in third grade because you were, building a commitment to an industry that you had just started with. We have, different deadlines that we had to make. There's so many things that existed with the schedule, everything except the ability to just exist. And that is something that when you come to this doorway, you end up with something that, you wake up one day without a purpose if you don't have that plan in action, if you don't keep those dreams alive. I mean, this is just so important. The structure that holds your life together for decades has vanished just like that. It's just gone. And you spent that identity thinking that, this is where you were going to be. I don't know if you spent that identity thinking that, you're going to take it outside of that tag ID that you're wearing. Sometimes, it can go into depression. I mean, because sometimes they close the doors. I recently, when I had to retire my license, my radiology license, boy, that really shocked me into authentic me because, I had to, I wasn't going to be doing the registry radiology anymore. I knew that I was not returning. And I worked so hard at the time for that ID. I worked so hard to pass those tests, mammography, radiology, studying ultrasound, working in bone density, all these things you studied so hard for. And then you find out that one day you close that license and now you're just your authentic self. You come back to zero. When I was 15 and I planted the dream to be something at 18 and get into this new field, now you're a number and you become all this. And what I didn't want to be was another sad story of young teenage life that developed into nothing, especially the environment I was coming from. I mean, you've seen it fall apart everywhere, a lot of dropouts, teenage pregnancies, all these different things. And I knew that wasn't my doorway. But when I got on the bus at 18 to become that radiology tech, I felt, wow. And here it was now time to shut that license off, time to, you're going to receive a certificate that tells you about all the golden years that you had in this. And, being a pioneer in it, it's even more interesting because when I do go to the radiology department right away, you see who the students are, and it's just funny because you're not allowed to ever touch those buttons again. You come into that department, now you are just you. And that other stuff behind you, you're in tune to it, but you can never access it again. So that access key has been taken away. And to think, do you prepare for this? Was this, nobody told me at the end of the road how that was going to go. I didn't know. I entered the field in a Lone Ranger type attitude. Nobody else was going to school for that. And so to wiggle myself out of it, again, on retirement, the line nobody talks about, what it's going to look like, how you're going to feel, uh, you dream about that there's going to be, vacations, and you're going to have this and you're going to have that. Well, in today's world, sometimes it just gets a little more complicated than that, because people become more, they have more chronic illnesses as they walk out of this department, as they come out, because that whole life of nourishing and providing your daily wake ups, you're not working out, you're not doing, you're not getting all your sleep. Technology has kicked in. And so all this stuff is powering you down instead of empowering you, because we lost the connection to what it was like to just grow yourself up in a normal life, where you're having your sleep, where you're eating good, healthy food, where you're working out and working and exercising and doing what you need to do to feed the mind plate, by putting good stuff in there with positivity, instead of looking at other people's lives on different social medias and seeing all these depressing things and filling up the thoughts with things like that. I mean, I know there's a lot of things that they teach you on there, but at the same time, sometimes some of those things can actually depress you. And so, and that is where, your Monday meetings, there are no more. These are things that you miss. You miss the quarterly reviews that nobody's looking for you for. You miss, being wanted. I miss being with my patients for sure. I really do. That's something, because I knew what a great job I did. I knew my special touch I had. I knew who I was when I was doing what I did. I know my dedication. I know how much my heart was for everyone that walked into my room, how they were treated. And especially when you hear stories of how they had been mistreated in the past, you definitely want to step it up to really change their thoughts so that they do return. Because one thing about mammography is, not everybody wants to come back. So, but when they know that they're coming back, it's just like your favorite hairdresser, right? You're going to come back to her because you liked what she's done. And that's how I felt with all my friends, with all my girlfriends in the field, all these ladies that I got to see seasonally. I knew who to expect. It was always a welcoming. The saga would pick up from where we talked last year. There was just so much, just like having your own girlfriends in the neighborhood, right? And that was my neighborhood. And growing up there, it doesn't exist anymore. And, you train yourself to find meaning in being needed. And then all of a sudden, there's nobody to go service that. And then you wonder, and again, because I told you the world got faster in the medical system, are they getting the care that they need? Research suggests that people who remain in different things like that, they stay through it. And I was saying that when I asked about my license and retiring it, I asked how many people had come to, that are still doing their license. And I was really amazed that they told me that there was still some 80-year-old people, some people, they just don't want to let go of that 2-week check. And I understand that, and especially the way society is today with all the increased prices and the circumstances and things like that. But to watch how they just want to push through that and avoid what's really waiting for you on that other door. I mean, that's why there's a reason that we do so much time on the job, but then there's a reason that we have time to sit back, retire, have fun, and, live life. But sometimes it's just harder, again, because of insurance and illnesses that need that insurance. And so, to keep those prescription medications, all these things. But what I want to say is that unexpected place you'll find yourself in, bringing yourself into a place where, are you really going to be prepared for this? Are you looking for that? women realizing the safe job. You're going to those corporate buildings every day, and it's a lot of corporate people, middle management and things like that are really taking a big hit, besides the nurses and everybody that I was talking about, because there's just so much to consider, so much that there's truth out there, that if we don't find it in ourselves, if we don't have a plan B ready to, if this happens to me. And remember, again, most women are the breadwinners of the family. A lot of women are single mothers, and all these things will fall on them. And it'll be so suddenly, because again, all these layoffs, all these things, I don't think 92,000 people were expecting that when that happened last month, but here they are today. And having this happen to you it is a shocking thing. I mean, I had time to kind of prepare for it, because again, that day back then it was a restructure. Today it's a rebalancing, and the rebalancing is really cutting you out, because even if I was able to go locate my job somewhere else, but if your job is taken over by AI, then wherever you're going to go chase that dream, AI will have the job before you get there. So thinking about what plan B will be if this happens to you. I mean, there's so many people today that unemployment rate are increasing. This uncertainty, something powerful is happening, and it could be just such a big pivot, because I studied. I've done a lot of other studying. I mean, during the whole time, what I also found during this time of changing life in my jobs was that I was building a second life while I was working, and my day was so tangled up all the way till like 3 a.m. I would be up because I'd have to be preparing and studying and creating content and all these different things that I do. I had to do all that while I was working my 8-hour job. So you had to incorporate that. And these are the things that if it's not being scaled underneath the cloth of what you're covered, on top of, this is just a cover. And you have to know that there needs to be something second to come to that for your future. Losing a job is not the end of you, because there's so much more you can create in you. It's the moment that you meet the part of yourself that was built for survival. And so that survival, the reinvention, and the forward motion is, where are you headed to step next? Are you ready to take a breath, feel the, I mean, some people get it through an email when they find out that they have lost their jobs. Mostly emails, right? I don't think it's going to come in a letter, or, you're going to get that permission slip that nobody gave us. We're supposed to love every minute, family time, cherish every home, repair, embrace everything. But if that's the biggest lie we tell ourselves, that this job has done everything to keep that alive, but now you've changed it because when your kids are asking, do you remember when I was in second grade and I drew you this picture, or I was doing this, or I was doing that, and that soccer game that I won, that baseball game that I was enrolled in. And sometimes you have to sit there because you don't remember, because you weren't there, because you were busy working. And that dedication to that job, it's a great thing to have. That's the way we were grown to live our lives. But there was a better ending to it. And now we don't know where that end is coming and at what point of our life it's going to come at. Right when you're ready to start climbing that ladder and getting those points, you find out that, oh my God, they took that ladder down because you can't climb any higher, because when you get there, AI is already sitting there at the top taking over. So, you are just something to think about, is really knowing that a long time ago, it used to be the strong survive, and that was never meant to be tested by AI, automation or disappearing departments. But here we are, and this is where we're at in the world, where jobs dissolve overnight. So today talking through liberating menopause, because again, hormones are a big factor in all this because there's an emotional chain of reactions that are going to happen. The cortisol can rise. There's so much more illnesses that can be created by all this inflammation of, the reactions that we're having by accepting and knowing that, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Oh my, all these different changes. You could be in perimenopause right now and these things hit you. You could be in postmenopausal thinking you're on your way out to go step out and retire and find out you already been called out to retire because the job has changed and you're not needed anymore. Or you see somebody who's more automated for the position, and that's where the young come in and take over, our senior positions. So there's just so much that we need to understand, and the permission, just knowing in yourself that, reclaiming something that has to change, if you can actually. Well, it's not surviving, it's just managing it. And it's just really understanding that we women have always learned to figure another way out. I mean, that was the beauty about being a woman. We always knew, even though the street looked like it's a one way and there's no way out, there's always another way to get on the other side of that road. And we just have to figure that out. So with ending today's presentation, I just really wanted to talk about and say, just start creating that room by design, not by the fact that there's a default and it fell apart because we don't know who that will be. But we do know that out of the 92,000 people that have lost their jobs, I mean, there were so many of them. And just knowing that there was I think 60-something% that were all women. That was really a very interesting factor when I was doing this. Healthcare was 28,000 that lost their jobs. 75% of them, I thought it was 75% of them were women. 75% women and 21,000. And the administrative support, 19,000, 13,000 of them women. Restaurant and bars, 30,000, and that I think was 16,000 women, according to my statistics here. I mean, this is just estimated that 62,000 women out of 92 total job losses. This is the estimate that aligns with the reality that women are concentrated in the very sectors that took the hardest hits. And that's because we're such go-getters. And that's because we want to be, we are taking over a lot. Our division in women's growth in the labor place has grown so much. And so it's just being aware and just know that everybody's at risk, no matter who you are. And just be prepared. And if anything, start preparing now. Because again, tomorrow's not promised. So it could all just happen today. We just don't know. So I want to end it with that until I see you again. Thank you so much. But prconnectionsradio.com. Thank you so much for allowing me to have this voice, liberating menopause. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Envision U. Envision U has discovered how to impact spirit, body, and soul with spray technology in just 30 seconds. With Envision U, you can achieve optimal health and start living the life you have always dreamed of. Use the promo code EnvisionU.com/VernDix to take control of your health naturally. PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.